It's late at night. The streetlights cast flickering shadows across your living room. You hear a squeak. Not just any squeak, but one loud enough to rattle the windows and reverberate through your chest. You freeze, heart pounding, and glance outside. That's when you see it, a hulking silhouette, eyes glowing like embers, and a tail as thick as a tree trunk. A rat the size of a car scurries past your home, its claws gouging deep ruts into the pavement. Terrifying, isn't it? Tonight we're diving into the spine-chilling possibility of colossal rats. Hold tight. It's going to be a nightmare-inducing ride. Rats are already unnerving, with their twitching noses and eerie resilience. But imagine if they were supersized. Their skeletal structure, flexible and agile, would transform into something monstrous, sturdy enough to crush cars and shatter walls. Their tails wouldn't just help them balance anymore. They'd become devastating whips, capable of obliterating anything in their path. A single swipe could demolish a lamppost, sending darkness spilling across the streets. And then there's the teeth, razor sharp, constantly growing and gnashing through steel. Imagine waking up to find your home chewed open, like a cardboard box. Or worse, a skyscraper reduced to rubble by a hungry, gnawing beast. The city skyline would become a jagged silhouette, ravaged by their insatiable appetites. Supersized rats wouldn't just be pests, they'd be predators. Their eyes, already unnervingly beady, would glint with an eerie glow in the dark, making them even more terrifying to encounter at night. With an enhanced sense of smell, they could track you down from miles away. Their olfactory powers would allow them to locate food hidden deep underground or inside buildings, leaving no hiding spot truly secure. Their claws, already sharp and capable of climbing, would turn into tools of destruction. Picture them shredding through concrete walls or peeling open metal doors like cans of tuna. These claws would make them masters of infiltration, breaking into any space humans thought was safe. Their speed and agility would also increase, allowing them to chase prey over long distances and through tight spaces with horrifying efficiency. Their impact wouldn't stop at physical terror. Their amplified intelligence would make them cunning hunters. Imagine a giant rat learning to set traps or coordinate attacks in small groups. Nowhere would be safe. Not your home, not your car, not even the highest floors of your building. And their agility, climbing walls, leaping between rooftops, breaking into places you thought were secure. These creatures would redefine what it means to be an apex invader. Now imagine encountering such a creature in your own home, a giant rat crashing through your walls with a deafening roar, its eyes locking onto yours as it begins its relentless pursuit. These monsters would haunt our nightmares and transform our world into a living dystopia. Imagine fields stripped bare overnight by rats the size of buses, leaving nothing but desolation behind. Entire food supplies would vanish, plunging humanity into chaos. Even more terrifying, these rats wouldn't just consume, they'd dominate. Rivers, sewers, and forests would become their territories. They'd overpower predators, forcing animals into extinction. Your family dog, helpless. Your backyard garden, gone. The ripple effects on agriculture and natural ecosystems would be catastrophic. Farmers would have no way to protect their crops against these invaders. Traditional pest control measures would prove useless, as giant rats could shrug off poisons and traps that once worked on their smaller counterparts. Entire regions could face famine as the rats consume not just grains and vegetables, but also livestock. Imagine herds of cattle being attacked by packs of ravenous bus-sized rodents, leaving fields littered with destruction. Forests would become battlegrounds as giant rats claimed dominance over other wildlife. Smaller predators, like foxes and owls, would be completely outmatched. Deer and other herbivores might become targets, leading to a cascading effect on plant life. With fewer grazers, some plants might overgrow, while others, trampled under the weight of colossal rodents, would disappear entirely. The balance of nature would be irreversibly altered. In urban areas, the chaos would only intensify. Giant rats would take over subway systems, collapsing tunnels and forcing people to flee their homes. Cities would descend into chaos, with people barricading themselves inside, desperate to escape the relentless onslaught. Picture entire neighborhoods abandoned, their streets overrun with scurrying behemoths. Imagine waking up to the sound of claws scraping against metal as these creatures rip through sewer grates and flood into basements. The soundscape of a city under siege by giant rats would be haunting. The scuttling of claws and piercing squeaks would echo through empty streets, turning every dark alley and shadowy corner into a potential death trap. People would live in constant fear, rationing supplies and avoiding the outdoors. Even daylight wouldn't guarantee safety as these rats, emboldened by their size, roam freely, smashing through doors and windows to seek food and shelter. But the impact wouldn't stop with immediate destruction. Rivers, often critical sources of water and transportation, would become unsafe. Giant rats, being natural swimmers, would dominate these waterways, preying on aquatic life and disrupting ecosystems. Boats and ferries could face attacks, their hulls gnawed through by relentless teeth. Fishermen would lose their livelihoods, and coastal areas might see an influx of displaced populations fleeing the rat-infested rivers. In ecosystems, these massive rodents wouldn't just be pests. They'd become apex predators. Their adaptability would allow them to hunt in packs, taking down larger prey and driving other predators to extinction. The entire food chain would shift, with giant rats at the top. The fear and devastation they bring would ripple across every habitat they invade, leaving nothing untouched. Even infrastructure would suffer. Sewer systems, already vulnerable to regular rats, would collapse under the strain of these massive invaders. Power grids and communication lines, often buried underground, could be destroyed as the rats burrow and chew through cables. The damage would be incalculable, leaving cities without electricity or connectivity for weeks or months at a time. Society as we know it could grind to a halt under the weight of their destruction. Ultimately, the survival of humanity would depend on drastic measures. Governments might be forced to deploy military resources using advanced weaponry to combat the threat. Scientists would race to develop new technologies or biological solutions to curb the rat population. Entire regions might have to be abandoned, declared uninhabitable due to the overwhelming presence of these monstrous creatures. The cost, in lives, resources, and infrastructure, would be unimaginable as humanity struggles to reclaim its place at the top of the food chain. Now, here's the most horrifying part. Diseases. Rats already spread plagues. Supersized ones could spark pandemics of unprecedented scale. A single flea-laden giant rat could infect an entire city, spreading sickness and panic like wildfire. Public health systems would collapse under the strain of attempting to quarantine infected areas while battling the physical threat posed by the rats themselves. Hospitals would overflow, resources would dwindle, and society could face an era of devastation unlike anything seen before. And then there's the psychological terror. Imagine walking home in the dark, hearing the rumbling of claws and realizing you're being hunted. A pair of glowing eyes pierces through the shadows, and then, before you can scream, it's upon you. You're not just prey, you're part of a nightmare that refuses to end. The psychological toll on survivors would be immense. Post-traumatic stress, paranoia, and the inability to trust their own senses would plague humans who live through these harrowing encounters. Families might huddle together in silence, afraid that the smallest sound could attract a rat's attention. The destruction wouldn't stop at fear. Giant rats could chew through infrastructure, collapsing bridges, shredding vehicles, and tearing apart cities. Buildings designed to withstand earthquakes or storms might still fall victim to the relentless gnawing of these beasts. Entire neighborhoods would be abandoned, left as hollow shells for these monstrous creatures to claim. Imagine cities like New York or Tokyo, hubs of human activity, reduced to silent, desolate ruins inhabited only by scurrying shadows. What about the soundscape? Amplified by their size, the squeaks and screeches of these rats would become a symphony of terror. Their movements, like rolling thunder, could be heard from miles away, and their battles with each other could shake the ground beneath your feet. The nights would become unbearable, filled with unrelenting noise and the horrifying knowledge that they were growing closer. The societal collapse could extend beyond immediate survival issues. Imagine the effect on transportation, with trains and subways rendered unusable due to infestations. Highways might become battlegrounds as giant rats attack moving vehicles in search of food. Air travel could face disruptions if runways and hangars become overrun. Supply chains would crumble, cutting off access to vital resources. In such a scenario, humanity wouldn't just be fighting the rats, but also struggling to maintain its civilization. Let's not overlook the rat's adaptability and intelligence. Over time, these creatures might learn to exploit our weaknesses, breaking into heavily fortified bunkers, sabotaging food supplies, and even ambushing humans. Their evolution as predators would make them even more formidable. As cities fall and rural areas become overrun, humans might be forced to live in isolated communities, constantly on guard, surrounded by the menace of the colossal rodents. Finally, consider the sheer hopelessness of combating an enemy that grows faster than it can be destroyed. Giant rats would breed prolifically, their populations spiraling out of control. The planet itself would become their dominion, with humans reduced to a vulnerable minority, desperately clinging to survival in the face of overwhelming odds. This dystopian reality, where the balance of power shifts irrevocably, would mark the end of human dominance on Earth. Could it happen? Genetic engineering makes it disturbingly plausible. With CRISPR, we could theoretically create larger, stronger rats. By manipulating genes responsible for growth and adaptability, scientists might one day achieve what seems impossible today. But should we? Imagine an experimental giant rat escaping a lab, wreaking havoc as scientists scramble to contain their mistake. A real-world horror story unfolding in front of us. The unintended consequences would be devastating. For one, the balance of ecosystems would be thrown into disarray. Even a single escaped giant rat could spawn a population of massive rodents, as they breed quickly and prolifically. Their size, coupled with their already exceptional survival skills, would make them almost impossible to control. Mutations could complicate matters further. Genetic engineering is never foolproof, and one small error in a gene-editing experiment could produce rats with unforeseen traits: hyperaggression, increased intelligence, or immunity to traditional pest control methods. Imagine a scenario where rats develop the ability to organize, strategize, and outwit human defenses. Entire cities could fall victim to coordinated attacks, with rats targeting food supplies, water sources, and even power grids. And what about the ethical implications? Creating giant rats for research or military purposes raises serious moral questions. Is it right to alter a creature so drastically for human purposes? Once released intentionally or accidentally, these rats would suffer as well. A world built for humans is not designed to accommodate creatures of such enormous size. Infrastructure, food sources, and even natural habitats would be inadequate for their needs, leading to widespread suffering among the giant rats themselves. The risks extend beyond ethics and practicality. Giant rats could also become a weapon of war. Nations might experiment with these creatures as biological weapons, unleashing them on enemy territories to devastate crops, infrastructure, and populations. But what happens when the weapon turns on its creators? The possibility of a global catastrophe would loom large. Then there are the potential unintended benefits. Studying the biology of giant rats could lead to advancements in medicine, robotics, and urban planning. Their unique adaptations, when scaled up, might inspire new technologies, such as stronger building materials or more efficient transportation systems. For example, the flexibility of their skeletal structures could inspire innovations in prosthetics or machinery designed to navigate tight spaces. However, these potential benefits pale in comparison to the risks. Imagine the public reaction to the unveiling of a genetically engineered giant rat. The fear and panic alone could destabilize communities. Protests, legal battles, and widespread distrust of science could follow, setting back genetic research by decades. In a worst-case scenario, the line between science fiction and reality would blur irreversibly. Humans might find themselves living in a world where their own creations have become their greatest threat. Humanity's survival would depend on our ability to adapt or to retreat entirely from their domain. Giant rats, equal parts terror and fascination. They remind us how delicate the balance of nature is and how easily it could tip into chaos. If such a nightmare ever became reality, would humanity survive? Or would we fall beneath the gnashing teeth of creatures we once dismissed as small and harmless? Think you could survive a world ruled by giant rats? Share your escape plan in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more horrifying what-ifs. Stay safe and watch out for the shadows.